Holy cow. It's like the internet nowadays is completely covered in controversy. It's almost as if controversy is literally the veins and blood of anything nowadays. It's like we have to find something controversial to, rile people up, to get an emotion out of somebody. Now, as much as I'm the type of person who I try my best to not, create that sort of controversy, I feel like it needs to be discussed because it kind of covers what we discuss on this channel, which is media. Movies, we talk about, TV shows, maybe music, we talk about media as a whole. So I feel like this is the topic that we need to discuss. And that's the topic of AI, and we are doing it once again. Now, the reason why I say once again, and if you're new here, you probably don't know, but we talked about AI in another video. Yes, I've already spoken about AI in another video, and I made it very clear what I think about AI. But I feel like a second video, specifically right now, when we are in a sort of bubble of AI that a lot of people are trying to burst. So I feel like right now would be the perfect time to get into AI once again. So what exactly is the new controversy? Because there's always different kinds of controversy. So what is the new controversial thing in the world of AI? And that is due in part by none other than ChatGPT. Yes, the system in which so many different people have been using to, either write code or help summarize movies and stuff. And luckily for me, I am the type of person who I don't use a script. Like right now, I'm talking directly to you, no script, nothing. Like honestly, it would be terrible for me to actually read something through AI because it wouldn't sound like me and it wouldn't, come across as genuine. So yeah, you're gonna see my errors. You're gonna get, whenever I say something wrong, you're gonna get that true human experience the way I speak. So I feel like it just wouldn't make any sense. But with ChatGPT, a lot of people have been using it to write scripts, to, literally make descriptions of items to sell on eBay. They've been able to, write songs through AI. It's not very good music. The lyrics aren't that great, but be able to use that to help write and structure a song or anything. It exists. And I feel like as much as that is great, they also have, the fact that you could create images. And that's also a little side thing that ChatGPT does. If you don't know already, a lot of the newest, conversational, multimodal ways of communicating with AI, whether it's, using Gemini or, using ChatGPT, Grok, which is, from X, or using Llama, which is from, Facebook. Whether you're using any of these, conversational AIs, most of them nowadays already have image generation as a part of their, system. So you can tell it, hey, can you create for me an image of a frog on a motorcycle? And that's what it will make. Or you can ask for it like, oh, can you draw me a picture of a woman walking by a hot dog stand? Can you design me an album cover for a band that is playing on Mars? I mean, I could go all day here, telling you just random things that I could write that could possibly become, something or a piece of art. Now, I want you to understand, art isn't necessarily what I would call it. There's a difference between human handmade artistic ability and numbers and letters that ultimately can create an image. Now, like I said, two very separate different things as well, but right now, that is where the controversy lies. And that's because ChatGPT just dropped their 4.0, ChatGPT 4.0 update, which allows you to literally take an image of yourself and transform it into something that resembles, something that was literally made by an artist. And, sure, we've had these experiences before. We can't sit here and say, oh, this has never existed. It has existed. There used to be apps like 10 years ago, actually more, like 12 or 13 years ago, where you would take a photo of yourself and it would make your face and make your, whatever you were seeing into a work of art. It would take an artist's style and make that it. Now, that in and of itself was something that was being done 12, 13 years ago. Now it's become a whole lot more advanced, Now if I want to make myself into, a character on, The Simpsons, I can do that. If I want to make it into a character that turns into something out of South Park, I can do that. But I feel like the biggest one that everybody has been talking about is Studio Ghibli. And Studio Ghibli, as you guys know, is a traditional animation studio in Japan that they hand draw every frame. They design and meticulously craft beautiful works of art that are cinematic and, emotional to so many people. And I feel like now everybody has been able to use a tool on the internet to design and make their own versions of Studio Ghibli style things. And one of the more famous ones that we've been seeing now are memes becoming, Studio Ghibli. As you can see this, you can see there are several versions of memes being put out in the form of Studio Ghibli. And a lot of people have been saying, oh, this is not art. This isn't art. Why are people calling this art? And I feel like, in part, I understand the rage. I understand where people are coming from. You can't have one person who spends hours working on a work of art. Sometimes for these studios that make these hand-drawn animations, it takes them days, months, weeks to get maybe even 30 or 40 frames, and we're talking about like a movie, typically, if we're talking about in cinema, works around 24 frames per second. And some movies do 30 frames per second, but it all depends on what kind of movie you're using or what kind of movie you're recording. But think about that for a second. Each individual frame, sometimes it takes an entire day to draw one frame or draw a couple frames. And that's a lot of hard work. Now, you put that up against somebody on the internet writing down, hey, can you take my image and you make that into Studio Ghibli? And suddenly it becomes a work by Studio Ghibli, and that the person did in a couple seconds. And then you can take that work and input it into another AI and make that into an animated form of what you just asked it to do. And, while somebody works hours on something, then you have AI that does it in a couple minutes. I understand the rage. I understand that to the person who worked hours on something, to see a computer come and do it in a couple seconds, it sucks. It sucks. I think about myself, like if I was in that position, like I'd be pretty upset too. If a computer came in and said, you know what, I can do your job in a couple seconds. And then suddenly people start to rely on that. I don't think that's where it all should lie. I feel like we need to take a step back and really focus and split the ideas of what AI and art are. So you might be asking, what do I define as true art? True art is made. It's human made. It's sometimes not even human made. It's nature made. You go to the Grand Canyon, that's nature made, but that's art. If you think about it, you could name that as art, but that's nature. That's beauty, and there's a certain grace to it, even though it's naturally made. And sometimes art is the same way. You have to sculpt, or you have to draw, or you have to kind of convey an emotion on either a sheet of paper or with clay, or you use a different form or medium that works for you. That's art. That is the definition of art. And I feel like if you are trying to reach an objective with your art, I feel like that is more important than to say, okay, this tool is going to ruin it for everybody. It's going to ruin it for creators and that sort of thing. I feel like this could, like, both ways can exist. We can exist with both ways. We can exist with the handmade art and value it and truly appreciate it, and give it worth, and also have these AI systems also working and in certain cases helping somebody else out. Now, here's what I think. I think I was sitting down today drinking coffee, and I was thinking about this very situation, because I read an article on The Verge talking about this very subject that we're talking about right now. But I started to think about this for a second. If I were to call up Studio Ghibli right now, and say like, hey, my friend is a really big fan of Studio Ghibli, and his wife and him, they love Studio Ghibli, and they would love it if you took this photo of them and you made it into Studio Ghibli. In my opinion, I don't know what Studio Ghibli would say. They might turn and say like, hey, I'm sorry, we don't do personal requests. Unfortunately, we will not be able to do or get this done for you. Or they will say yes, but they're going to charge you a lot of money, which I feel, in my opinion, whatever they charge is actually worth what that work is going to be like. And, sometimes the person who is there is probably not inclined or doesn't have that in their budget to have an actual artist go and make that for them. So then they have to resort to something like AI to actually go and do it. Now, here's the thing. Whatever that studio is charging to make one small frame with one specific image, whatever they're charging, I feel like if you are a massive fan of that work, you're going to invest in making sure that that person makes that art for you. And if that studio says no, that they don't want to do that for you, and you want to have that as a memento or something that you're going to treasure, then AI is the only way to go. So it really is a situational thing, because I feel like we can still have an incredible system of artistry, skill, passion, people who know exactly what they're doing and are super talented in making that thing a reality. And we can also have, at the same time, an AI that can recreate these images for us. You know, sometimes you have to think about, like, imagine if, you know, the artist isn't here anymore. The artist, you know, is old and they don't draw anymore, or they're not, you know, it's not their thing anymore. And somebody just wants to feel like some level of connection to that artist's work. I feel like AI doesn't sound as bad as that can seem. Now, mind you, I am very much aware of the side effects that AI can create. And I talk about that in my other video that I just showed, the thumbnail for. That video alone, I talk about the repercussions a little bit about what AI could cause. And I feel like those are more impactful and more important than how this is being utilized. We're utilizing it in a much lighter form. That's the thing. It's a very controversial issue that we can look at it in both ways, and I feel like we can use and utilize both equally. We just have to learn to value humanity more than just the mechanics and the ones and zeros of it all. And if you are the type of person who thinks like I do, that I feel like we should be, promoting and showing off people's hard work, then I want to hear from you down below. I want to hear what you guys think. Do you think that artistry truly becomes powerful when it comes from an artist, from a human hand, from somebody who put hours and days into something to make it what it is? Do you think that is where the value is? And do you think that we can coexist, that artists can coexist with artificial intelligence? And do you think that something like this, like, ChatGPT's, image generator, if that is going to cause such a disturbance that artists are not really going to be able to survive? I don't know. I want to hear from you, and I want to hear what your thoughts are, because I want to have this discussion with you guys down below. And if you're down there, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified when new videos go live on this channel. And thank you so much for watching this video. And I'll see you in the next video.
Scrolling through YouTube, same old routine, then bam, movie savant, what a scene. Trivia bombshells dropping knowledge like rain. Forget the dishes, gotta watch it again. Movie buffs unite, savants to place. Subscribe and hit the bell, don't leave a trace. Next level knowledge keeps you in the loop. Savants got the scoop, ain't nothing to recoup.